Guys, welcome to the J Scott Outdoors podcast. This is going to be kind of a fun thing that I'm going to try out. I've done a bunch of episodes with Chris Rowe of Roe Hunting Resources here on the podcast, and there's so much good information out there that Chris provides. I thought I would do, going into elk season here, 2018, I thought I would kind of do the elk Chris Rowe greatest hits. And I'm going to go back, 3+ years ago and pull out some great conversations that Chris and I had here on the podcast rather than making you guys go and search for those older archived episodes. I thought I would just bring out the best in those episodes. So I hope you really enjoy this. I'm going to do a couple of these. I know you get a lot of value out of Chris Rowe and what he brings to the table. I want to thank the sponsors of this podcast for making this possible and remind you guys that the Go Hunt Insider is doing a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is go to gohunt.com/jscott. It's free. Go try it out for 30 days. There's no skin off your back, and you can just go check it out for free. I also want to thank kuyu.com. Jason Harrison and his crew just got word that Jason harvested an awesome ram up in the Yukon, and that's exciting. Can't wait to hear more about it. Also want to thank the Outdoorsmans. Use the J Scott promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount on all Outdoorsman's products. And Canyon Coolers. If you use the J Scott promo code, if you go to canyoncoolers.com, use the J Scott promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount on all orders. Also, guys, don't forget about Dar Colburn and Jay Pyburn at the Colburn Pyburn team selling real estate in Arizona. You can get a $500 gift certificate for using their real estate services. Go to colburnpyburnteam@gmail.com and you can find out more about that. Let's get right to these episodes with Chris Rowe of Roe Hunting Resources. Guys, thanks for all your support of the podcast. Thank you for all of the support of my Instagram. If you don't follow on Instagram, you can at jscottoutdoors. You can also send me an email, jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. I appreciate each and every message that I get from every one of you. I'm going to be up in Alaska for about 10 days, getting a second chance here. I was at the Northwest Territories. Now I'm headed to Alaska. Hopefully I'll be able to find a big Dall sheep to harvest, and so we'll be chatting at you when I get back. Thanks for all your support, guys. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got Chris Roe of Roe Hunting Resources, and it's great to have you on today, Chris. I'm excited to break out some of these elk audio clips and see if we can, break into some of the noises that are being made and why they're making them, and how this can all relate to elk hunters. But the clip has just run in its entirety, and our listener has gotten to listen to the 5.5 minute clip. And I think the value of us breaking it down, I think a lot of guys are going to really enjoy that. First of all, Chris, how you doing?
Doing all right, my friend. How are you been?
Oh, I'm doing good. I've been really trying to focus on, getting my body in as good a shape as it possibly can be in by doing a lot of hiking here out of Carbondale. And I think I did close to 10 miles today. And, for me, just getting ready, the best thing that I can do is duplicate how I'm going to be elk hunting. And for me is hitting all these trails around Carbondale, where anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 feet, within a 15-20 minute drive of my doorstep here, has got me really. I've come a long ways in a couple 3 weeks that I've been really getting after it. So I'm excited about that.
Well, have you told people yet why? I mean, have you told people what tag you drew?
Well, yeah, I've mentioned it on the podcast. For those listeners out there, I drew a Utah beaver unit elk tag. I had 16 bonus points going in, and I actually just saw the numbers yesterday. I drew a 1 in 172. I'm the only non-resident that has the archery tag. There's 6 resident tags, so there's 7 tags total. Now, keep in mind, we do have to compete with spike and cow and archery deer hunters, but I believe the spike and cow hunters cannot hunt the last week of the season. But 7, archery hunters, limited entry archery hunters. So, the quality on the beaver, from everything I'm being told, is good. And so for me, being fairly a flatlander coming from Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, there's no better way for me to prepare for this elk hunt than to be at elevation and to be, hiking at the elevation that I'm going to be hunting at. So Carbondale, Colorado is very similar to the town of Beaver, Utah, and the unit actually is very similar to where I'm at spending the summer here, and anywhere from 6,000 to 12,000 foot peaks. So it's just a perfect simulator, if you will, for what I've got going.
Yeah, that's nice. That's awesome. I'm jealous. That's going to be a sweet tag.
Yeah, I was really excited going into the draw, just from the standpoint, I think the dates are about 5 or 6 days later in Utah than they normally are, and I'm hoping that the last week of the hunt that the rut will pick up, but you never know. You don't know what weather's going to bring. You don't know what the timing of the season, if they're really going to get cranked up. But I'm going to give it my best and going to have fun doing it. I want to dive into these clips, and I want a guy with your background, a biologist, and you have studied the elk language so extensively, and your resource, the elk module on Roe Hunting Resources, has been such a pivotal part in me learning a lot about elk sounds. I wanted to have you on this podcast to break down some of these sounds so that our listener could be able to hear someone that really knows what the elk are saying and why they're saying it, because I've learned to be a good elk caller by mimicking, and a lot of times I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. And since I had you on the podcast, for the listeners that are listening for the first time, you can go back through the archives, and there's some great episodes with Chris Roe talking about elk. And
what it's done for me is it's actually helped me in my strategy in calling, because now not only am I trying to mimic these sounds, but I'm trying to know what they're saying, and I'm trying to understand what they're saying, and you've been such an integral part of that.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's kind of a passion of mine, and I really enjoy it. And obviously, like we've talked about before, I've built an entire website around it. I do think it is important to kind of get an understanding of what they're saying, and more importantly, why they're saying it. And I love this clip because, I mean, already I know of a couple things that I want to chat about, but there's so much to it that I think people can get out of it. And even if you don't, I don't even know how I'm going to say it. I think the best thing to do is to have people just listen to it over and over again, and then let's just go through it and let's talk about some of the specifics that we hear, because there is it's so dynamic, and there's just so much to it. I think that people are going to get out of it once they really dissect it.
Yeah, and you know, for the listeners out there that maybe don't understand elk behavior and you know, why these elk are making these sounds, I mean, that's why I've brought Chris on here to help us, because I've been in the boat, like I said, of I've always tried to sound as good and mimic as good as I can and sound as natural as I can, but to take it another step further, which you do on the elk module at Roe Hunting Resources, is you actually go into why they're making it. And I think the more I'm able to understand why they're making it, it really helps me when I'm trying to assess the situation. I hear bulls bugling, I hear cows, calves talking back and forth, and if I just start chiming in, you know, with saying the wrong thing, it would be as if someone comes into a conversation and they're not even talking about the same thing we're talking about. You'd look over and be like, what are you talking about? You're not even in the right context.
Well, and that's the big one, if you're in the right context or not. And because people need to realize, and the same thing goes with this, and you and I talked about this a little just briefly, just being able to listen to an audio clip is one thing. But if you don't know the context in which you're listening to it, it's hard to really understand, it can be difficult to really understand what's going on. So if you're just going to mimic something based on what you've heard, that's good. I mean, and that right there's your first layer. Get good quality sounds and be proficient in your calling, and being able to mimic these things is extremely important. But the hunter needs to realize that when you are vocalizing, when you're running those calls, you are painting a picture in that other animal's head. They're going to have a very solid expectation of what they should see when and if they come into your setup. If that animal, you know, goes from wherever they are to your setup, the entire time, if they've responded to your calling and they are coming into your setup, they've liked what they've heard. You've given them at least something that they feel that they are interested in and that's in their best interest to go check out. But keep in mind, they have a solid visual image, a picture in their mind, an expectation of what they should see when they get close, or even especially when they get to the point where they should be able to see you, what I call the doorway. They're going to have a very solid expectation. That expectation comes from the vocalizations that they hear and the meaning that those vocalizations have. So on my site, on the elk module, my big focus is a lot of times is on the video aspect of it. And the video clips, we have an entire section, the gallery, where you can watch stuff like this, or the strategies and action sections, where you get to actually see the animal doing the vocalizing, but more importantly, you get to watch their body language. You get to watch how they interact with one another. You get to see what is going on, and it better helps you understand why they are doing it, which then translates when you start calling. If you went into the field and you mimicked what you just heard, you mimicked that entire thing, well, it pays to understand what you just painted a picture in their mind, because that animal's going to come with an expectation, and if when he gets there, it doesn't make sense, or he doesn't get what he's expecting, That's when you trigger them to swing around downwind of you. That's when you trigger them to set up or to hold up and hang up out of range. It triggers all sorts of things that the hunter's going to have a problem dealing with, rather than if you just used it strategically, got them to come in and painted the right picture so they knew what to expect, and you're in the right area, and everything was hunky-dory, to where when they walk and hit that doorway, they're standing right in front of you and they just take an arrow or take a bullet.
Yeah, perfect. Let's take a quick break here and hear from our sponsors, and then we're going to dive right into the first part of the 5.5 minute clip and our commentary. That's probably a good spot there, Chris. Chris, what do you hear in that that jumps out at you that you'd like to point out in that clip?
Probably and this is something that I deal with a lot. I hear this all the time. People talk about all the time about, I want to sound like a bunch of elk. All right, well, there you go. That right there, everybody knows, or I would think that a lot of people would know that's multiple animals in that spot. Now, obviously, you have a bull or two in the mix, but most of that vocalization the vast majority is all cow vocalizations. All right, cow talk. And there's a lot of people that will always come up and say, "Well, I want to sound like a bunch of elk." Well, okay, a bunch of elk doing what? I can take you to Rocky Mountain National Park or Yellowstone or wherever, and I can park you in front of 300 head of cows and calves and bulls, and you don't hear anything but crickets or magpies, because they're all feeding and they're all relaxed and they're not communicating. Just because there's a lot of elk doesn't mean they're saying stuff. And when they are saying things, there's a meaning and there's something to it. So when a lot of people talk about saying, well, I want to sound like a bunch of elk, oftentimes when you tell them, you ask them, like, well, what do you mean? And you have them demonstrate what they're talking about. You'll hear a lot of people doing what I call the chirps and mews, just that basic contact, meh, 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 back and forth. Well, yes, that can sound like a bunch of elk. But in this case, if you really listen to this and you pay attention to the structure of the vocalizations that they're giving, you're going to hear there's very, very few basic contact mews. There's almost no chirp. I didn't hear a single chirp in there. Very rarely did I hear any contact mews. The vast majority of the vocalizations you hear in there from cows vocalizing are all lost mews. There's some whines in there, but they're all lost mews. Those animals are looking for a response. That vocalization is being used very specifically. Now, you've set up this video, and so people understand what we're dealing with here, but
yeah, and for people that were maybe asleep in the intro, basically this clip is a bunch of elk that are coming out of the trees, working across an open area on their way kind of to a gathering spot, quote unquote water hole. It's in Arizona on public land. It's in the evening time, and so you've got a group of 30 to 40 elk, and they are moving from point A to point B, and it's exactly what you're saying. One of the things that I heard there was I heard a pleading cow, and I don't know if pleading is the right, but she's calling to her calf, and the calf isn't exactly responding to her, and you hear her intensify, and you even hear her kind of have a little bit of a growl to her call. And I'm curious your take on that intensity of, in my mind, in going into English, it would be like, where are you? Get over here. I told you to get over here. What are you doing? What do you think she's saying?
Well,
The main cow.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that the prominent cow vocalizing in there is giving a lost mute. She is looking for a response. I talk about all the time about what that, you can have a response that's visual, or you can have a response that's vocal, and it depends on what the cow wants and what she's going to get. But she is listening, or she's looking for a response. She is trying to elicit a response from someone. So if she doesn't get the response that she's looking for, if she vocalizes, and I separate things out into, generally speaking, a level 1, 2, or 3. Just basically, level 1 is very passive. Level 2 is a little bit more intense, and level 3 is where you're putting a lot of emotion to it. Okay, so she builds it up. You hear her vocalizing, and yeah, that intensity level starts to build, and she starts adding that, what you call pleading. You can hear that inflection in her voice. She drags it out a little bit more. She emphasizes a little bit more. She starts putting a little bit more of that strain in that voice. She's pleading, if you want to say that, or she's just really putting the wood to that lost mute to say, I want a response. Where are you? Either give me a vocalization back or show up. I want you to make visual eye contact with me. Where are you? So absolutely, you nailed it. I mean, a lost mew, and that's what you hear throughout most of this, is a lost mew. These animals are looking for a response, and they're trying to stay together with one another, and they're trying to keep tabs on either another specific cow or a specific calf of, either their calf or some other's calf and somebody else's calf or another cow, but they're trying to maintain contact with one another while they move across the landscape.
And to be clear, when you say lost mew, you don't mean that the elk don't know where they're at and they're lost. Within the herd dynamic and animals walking around and they can't see their calf, in this particular case, that main cow that is making the most sound that you hear, you hear say, where are you? You hear start pleading with it, and then you start kind of throwing some growl to it. She just can't see her calf within the herd.
Correct.
It's not like they're just wandering around. They have no idea where they're at. I just wanted to point that out. And then I think it's funny, and we hear it all the time, where cows and calves are going back and forth, and then all of a sudden the bull bugles, and you say, well, why'd that bull bugle? Well, I don't know that it had anything exactly to do with the predominant cow in this clip making all the racket.
Probably not. I agree with that. Probably not. She's not. It's not like she's looking for that bull. She's not asking for the bull's there. I mean, if she wants that bull, she can just walk over to him. She knows where the bull is. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the bull is just bugling just to broadcast his location and saying anybody else that's out on the landscape, this is where we are. Come along with us.
Right. We can probably go ahead and run another clip here. You can probably stop it there, Chris. thing that I want to point out there is, and I say this a lot, when guys are trying to become a better elk caller, if they can get that real nasally sound and listen to clips such as these, you're going to be way better off even than listening to some of the best elk callers out there, because some of the best elk callers that there are, and I've had the fortune of listening to a lot of the best elk callers there is, being a judge in the elk calling contest for 3 years. It's really hard, even for the best of the best, to mimic that real nasally sound. And then within those nasally sounds to have all the different inflection points. And so if you're wanting to become a better caller, listen to these cows and how it's not the same, same sound every time. There's all sorts of inflection that they're putting on the call, and that's something that I took out of this. And then you could hear those calf mews or chirps. I'm curious to see what you're going to call them, Chris. I've called in a lot of bulls actually sounding like a calf. I don't know why, but I know that I've made those little soft calf sounds, and for whatever reason, a lot of times bulls will just come running over, licking their lips.
Yeah, for me, I agree with that. I mean, I agree with all of that. And to one thing to clarify, so people don't get bent out of shape, we're not talking about specific when we're talking about don't just focus on people who call or good callers. We're not talking about individual people. We're just
not at all.
We're just talking about generally, if you're listening to a human do the calling, you can have some humans that are extremely, extremely good, but
Correct.
They're still going to have a limitation. So if you try to mimic that individual, you are mimicking that individual, and you are going to be limited based off of their limitations. That's why I mean, again, in the elk module, I have the gallery. That was the whole purpose for that. Listen to the elk, because I don't think we have the lung size, lung structure, most of us, to be able to push the air like elk do. And so some of even those subtler, breathy sounds that they make are going to be a challenge for us. But if you're listening from an elk, if you're listening to the elk, it gives you the most pure teacher that you could ever hope to listen to and strive towards. So even if you miss the mark a little bit, you're at the most pure form that you can by listening to the elk. So absolutely, listen to those elk sounds, or watch elk as much as you can, whether it's video, whether it's in person, whatever. Spend time with elk and elk sounds, okay? And now the other thing that you mentioned, and I hope people picked up on, that first break when we kind of broke it there, it was about a minute and a half or so. And if you listen to that first minute and a half, you'll hear a lot of cow vocalizations. And again, from what I hear, is a lot of lost mews, those mews that are trying to elicit a response. Now, again, like Jay said, it's not because they're lost. That's just a common vernacular. So for people that are just getting into elk hunting and they're not very familiar with terminology, for generations, long before I was even born, people that were calling elk generally classified and named that type of vocalization a lost mew, because it was a cow that's separated and she's looking for someone, okay? So we just maintain that kind of vernacular. So a lost mew does not necessarily mean they're lost, just means they're looking for someone. Well, that first minute and a half, about, if you pay attention or you go back and listen to it, you're going to hear a lot of cows vocalizing. You'll hear the calves in the background, but you're going to hear a lot of cows vocalizing. Well, the cool thing about this, at about 1:30 to 1:45, you'll hear a transition. All of a sudden, I start picking up a few assembly mews that the adult cows start to tone down their vocalization. All of a sudden, you'll hear a couple assembly mews thrown in there, which that's a cow saying, I want you to come to me. So all of a sudden, boom, you get a couple of assembly mews, and then all of a sudden, you hear the bulk of the mature cow sounds fade off, and you'll have a handful of calf vocalizations in there. Now, those calf vocalizations, for me, are still lost mews. Those calves are looking for, presumably, their mothers or the adults that they were tagging along with. So they're trying to catch up, and they're either lagging behind, or they're just trying to catch up. They're trying to make that final little contact with whoever they're trying to respond to and show up for. But the cool thing about this is, and people need to, and I think this is important for people to identify, if you are going to, and quite honestly, this whole thing would be classified what a lot of hunters would call excited cow calling. You'll hear people talk about excited cow calling. This, in my opinion, would classify as an example of what some people say excited cow calling. Well,
but it's not.
Well, exactly. It's what some people would call it. All right. So, but even then, all right, if you listen to it, there are ebbs and flows. There are high points. There are low points. There are places where there's a lot of vocalizations, and then there's places where it tones itself back, and only there's a couple vocalizations. All right. So for a solo hunter like myself and like a lot of people, this is where if you want to try to sound like this, a couple things. Number one, you're going to have to be running, in my opinion, multiple types of calls. So have a diaphragm in your mouth, have a wide reed, external reed call, maybe have a narrow, skinny reed, external reed call, maybe a hoochie mama or whatever, but have multiple calls at your disposal because, like you hear in here, there's a lot of different vocal signatures. That's another thing that I talk about in the module is I talk about the vocal signatures. Well, you can hear there's a pile of different individual elk because you hear the individual voices. So number one, if you want to sound like this, you need to have multiple calls. I don't care if you have a good mouth diaphragm in your mouth. The vocal signature of that call is going to be relatively fixed. So you can do a high-pitched, calf vocalization or a low-pitched mature cow sound, but that's it. You got two. High-pitch, low-pitch, you're one cow. It's not until you grab another type of call that you're going to impart another vocal signature. And then number two, don't just hammer it and stay sustained in your cadence and what you're doing. Make sure you have some periods where you're calling fast and furious, and then maybe taper it back, let things sit, let things be quiet, maybe throw in a couple calf calls here and there. But then let that be dynamic. Let it ebb and flow. Let it have some organic component to it. It will sound so much more realistic. It sounds like a tiny little thing. And when you listen to this, you don't even notice as it's happening unless you specifically pay attention to it. But I will tell you, on the landscape, you will be able to tell a group of elk doing this versus someone over off to the side doing the calling. Now, obviously, if you have a multiple person setup, you've got a hunter, a shooter, and then a couple guys behind or whatever, it makes it much, much more easy to sound like multiple animals. But make sure your party, your hunting party, and the people that are doing the calling still have this all in the same. You're all on the same page. You have this in mind, ebb and flow, and have that organic nature to it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. You point out the assembly muse, and it's very specific. And what happens when a couple of those cows fire off assembly muse? All of a sudden, you get a couple bulls bugling.
Yeah. Well, and because they're saying, "I want you to come here," and they're responding.
Right.
The bulls are like, "All right."
Are you talking to me, or are you talking to your cow?
Well, and a lot of times the bulls are like, "Okay, she's saying I want you to come to me," so that means especially when we're talking about mature bulls, people need to remember this. Mature bulls follow the cows. They're not the ones out there leading the cows and saying, "Oh, we're going down here." Now, they'll push them in places. Most of the time, when they push them in places, it's to get away from another bull or get away from danger. But most of the time, it's to get away from another bull. But most of the time, if a mature bull is doing his job, he's going to let the cow do the dictating of where we go. So when that cow, you got a couple of them, and it's very subtle. But when you hear that cow and drag out that low note, she's saying, "I want you to come to me." That means she's staying where she's going to be. She is where she wants to be. And if that bull is like, "Oh, I need to be over there," he's going to vocalize and say, "Okay, everybody else that's out there that is, responding to the sound of my voice and is coming my way, we're going this way. This is where we need to be." She's over there. She says, "I'm comfortable. I'm relaxed. I'm stationary. I want you to come to me." And even if she's calling her cow, talking to her calf, or talking to another cow, that bull's going to be like, let's go. We're going that way.
Good stuff. What do you think? Roll a little bit more?
Sure.
Okay. Let's stop it right there, Chris. What do you interpret those last cow sounds? What would you call that?
Well, that cow, again, she's still primarily doing lost mews. But the beautiful part about that is she's so close to the microphone, you can just hear the subtle stuff. And actually, that's from the last time we stopped at about 220 until about now, which is about 4 on my counter anyway. It's about 4:15. You heard a lot of dead air in there. They actually, there was very little vocalizations to start, but the vocalizations you did hear were just those subtle, just whines and just breathy sounds.
And that's that ebb and flow you're talking about too.
Yeah, but more importantly, in this one is, okay, if that bull is in close, if he's close and you need to get him to step out one more step or 2 more steps, or you've got to really just kind of finish that animal to finally come into your shooting lane, don't just statically just come and give your just basic run-of-the-mill mew. Because if you hear as you hear this, there's a lot of breathiness to it. There's a lot of, some people say emotion to it. Yes, there is. You can hear that. Okay? Add that stuff. And this cow at the end, again, she's mostly doing lost mews, but she's adding those, what I call, you can add, say, a demanding mew, or she can say a frustrating whine. You can do just regular whines, whatever you want to call them. But she's obviously that's the realism, but she's still trying to elicit a response. She's still trying to get someone to respond to her, and she's just adding that realism that I think people sometimes fail to make, and they forget that when you're using a diaphragm, you still can add your voice, or either your voice or your breathy sounds to that cow, that cow vocalization, that cow call. We talk about it all the time, and a lot of people talk about it all the time when we're bugling. If you want to get a more realistic bugle, you have to add those breathy sounds. You have to add your voice. Sometimes people forget that you can do the exact same thing with cow vocalizations, and I would argue you should, especially when they're in close, especially if you want to finish them. If you want to be that little bit better than every other hunter that's on the mountain, listen to her and listen to those subtle sounds that she puts in there and try to incorporate those in your calling sequences.
Great stuff. Let's roll it. Right there. That's exactly what you're talking about right there in that second note where she hit it, and it
exactly
changed her tone a little bit, but it adds a little bit more intensity to it or inflection to it.
Yeah, I talk about the frustrated whine. That frustrated whine is a vocalization. A lot of times what they'll do is just it is exactly what what it sounds like. Frustrated, and it's a whine. And you can literally, and if you're watching the body language, I can tell you right now, you just watch her and you listen to watch her ears, you watch her head position, neck position, body position. She's looking intently. You can almost see the expression on her face where she's like, "Where are you? Come on!" And you can hear that. Give me a response. Somebody, come on. Where are you? Show up. Respond to me, please. Again, people talk about all the time pleading or adding that emotion. Okay, there we are. Take it a step further and say, okay, add emotion to what? Okay, she's giving you a lost mew. That lost mew means something specific. What does it mean? She's asking for a response. It can be vocal or it can be visual, but she really, really wants it. So if you're going to add that emotion, you're going to add that pleading component to it, you're saying, I want a response, but man, dang it, please, just respond. Okay, so it adds that level of realism. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome example.
All right, let her roll. Those elk actually were so close you could hear their footsteps. That, you know, the tapping that you could hear was them literally getting so close to the camera that you know, you could hear them walking.
Yeah,
and
that's what I talk about all the time. Call them to your toes, baby.
Yeah, and it just, like you said in the prior, you know, break or statements, you know, it's so close, she's so close to the mic, you can actually just hear the emotion in that call. You can just hear it. And I can't stress enough that if guys would be a little less afraid of, you know, quote unquote, being aggressive, I don't really necessarily mean, it's not an aggressive calling, but it's like, get out of your box, get out of your shell a little bit as a caller. Listen to these sounds over and over and over and mimic the emotion in these sounds. And when you get into the woods, actually don't be scared to initialize contact, and then because you've practiced so much making these quality sounds, don't be afraid to then put emotion in your calling. It'll make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Now, this is where I will say that yes, but also make sure you're doing it strategically and for a purpose and know what you're saying.
Yeah, you don't want to start out just. Yeah, I mean, you need to make you need to contact and make, you know, you don't just, if you were walking down the street and all of a sudden you heard somebody going, hey, come over here, you might run because you might think the guy's over there getting mugged. You know, the initial response may be not, I'm going to come help. It might be like, I don't know what's going on over there, but I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, well, but the same token, yeah, I mean, the funny part is you could be at a coffee shop and somebody's sitting there drinking a cup of coffee with their friend, and one of them is going, oh, this is so good. This is so good. Oh, this is so good. Okay, how many of us are going to want to go over first? All right, so you have contact vocalizations, what I classify passive vocalizations, where you really don't want to add emotion. All right, there is no point to add emotion, because you add emotion to your basic passive contact vocalizations, you are going to sound very,
A
very
freak.
strange. But when,
You're gonna be a freak.
yes, but yes, when you are talking about what, and I classify these as targeted. You know, I talk in the elk module all the time about passive strategies, or in the Elk Hunter Strategy app. People look at that and you'll hear me talking about, or see me talk about passive strategies, targeted strategies, and aggressive strategies. Well, this whole thing fits squarely in the realm of what I would consider a targeted. If I was doing the calling, this would be a targeted strategy, because I'm saying specific things to elk outside of my group. I'm saying vocalizations that are trying to speak to someone else other than the elk that are right there with me, right next to me, that I can see and that I can engage with on a visual basis. So yes, when we're talking about targeted vocalizations and targeted strategies like this, and we're talking about lost mews, assembly mews, frustrated whines, aggravated whines, all that, selfish mews, whatever, that, yes, pour the emotion into it. But if you're talking about basic contact vocalizations, maybe not so much.
Yeah, for sure. That's great stuff, buddy. I really appreciate you interpreting these clips with me. I look forward to doing it again. I want to thank you for the great resource that you have at Roe Hunting Resources in the elk module. I want to encourage the listeners that want to seek out more of and get a detailed interpretation, and get to see the video and listen to Chris go through a bunch of these elk behavior and vocalizations, to make sure to check out the elk module. Chris, I want to give you a chance to tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just www.roehuntingresources.com, ROE huntingresources.com. And like Jay said, it's for those of you that if you want a deeper understanding, if you want to have a better connection and really, I mean, just take your calling to the next level and really understand behavior and understand why these elk are doing what they're doing. Why is she saying what she's saying? And what does the body language, tell you? And how, when you're out in the field, if you see this and you hear this, if you want to understand what is going on, so you have a better ability to predict what they're going to do and what the bull is going to do, or what the bull expects and what vocalizations that you might need to either follow up on or do differently, that's what the elk module does, and my website kind of helps folks do. We've got hours. I think now it's more, just the elk module itself has got more than 20 hours, and it's all video based. So in a large percentage of it, whether you're talking about the gallery, where it's just nothing but raw elk behavior, elk footage, elk vocalizations, not necessarily in a hunting situation, it's just watching the elk do what the elk do. You hear them, you watch them. I provide commentary. I provide a breakdown of it, or the strategies and action section where we go out into the field in a hunting situation, but we still get to see the behavior. We still get to hear the vocalizations, and then I'm actively trying to call them in. When you get to see this behavior and watch their body language, it really does open up the whole new world as far as your level of understanding and your ability to adapt and change to situations, because everything's out in the field always changing. And so if you understand why elk are doing what they're doing, you will have a much better ability to roll with the changes and adapt and do what is necessary to get the animal in front of you, than if you are just, I'm just going to throw out some random cow sounds or random, bugles or whatever. So yeah, if folks are interested in that, jump on there. It's a subscription-based website. We've got either 3-month subscriptions or a full year subscription. The base price is either $25 for the 3-month or $50 for the full year access. And Jay, I've always done it for you guys. If they type in Jay Scott Podcast, as they go through and check out, there's a little spot for a coupon code. You just go Jay Scott Podcast, and it'll knock 20% off. So
awesome! I thank you for doing that for my listeners. What do you have coming up? I believe you have an over-the-counter archery elk tag. I don't know how you're going to follow up last year with as big a bull as you shot. What do you got coming up?
Well, I have that's a good question. I've been given an opportunity to go tag along with a buddy of mine in a new high country area. He's been begging me to check out, so I'm scheduling right now to go up and do a scouting trip with him here shortly. So we'll see what kind of bulls we see up in his area and see what opportunities there are there. I have the opportunity to go back to where I normally go if the bulls that my bull was running with are still there. If they survived, then we're going to be talking about a couple more bulls up there in that 340 to 360 class range that it might be hard for me not to go chase back after. But the problem is where these guys live is not easy to get to. So I'm going to have to do some more. I'm going to have to start working on my legs a little bit more. But so we'll see. But I've got my elk hunt. I'll probably be able to take that first week, maybe 10 days, and then I'm off to Arizona.
Awesome, buddy. Well, thanks so much for spending time here with us, and I can't wait to crack into the next elk clip. I want to remind the listeners you're going to be able to view the video of this clip you just listened to on Roe Hunting Resources on the elk module. And, buddy, as always, everybody loves hearing your interpretations. Thank you for spending time with us here.
Anytime. Thank you very much.
All right, buddy. God bless. Guys, I want to thank Chris Rowe for coming on and sharing his expertise with us. I want to remind you that this clip, the actual video clip, will be seen in Chris's elk module, and you can use the J. Scott podcast promo code when you sign up. I believe it's $20 for a 3-month subscription or $50 for a 1-year subscription. If you use the J. Scott podcast promo code, you can see this video clip, and also that gets you that 20% off, that $20 and $50. So hope that helps. Hope you enjoyed the Real Elk Sounds episode part 1, and I look forward to sharing more with you. Okay, Jason.
Jack, what time is it?
Bull killing time!
What time is it?
Bull killing time!
I didn't hear you the first 2 times. What time is it?
Bull killing time till the sun goes down!
Awesome. All right, let's go.
Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Mr. Chris Rowe with us from Roe Hunting Resources. And I believe we released Real Elk Sounds 1, episode 161, and it's already been a great success. I've gotten a lot of feedback from it. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, you need to go back and download and listen to that episode. There's about a 5.5-minute clip there of some really close cows that are making loss mews and assembly mews, and they get more excited, they put more inflection. You can just tell there's so many different vocalizations in that clip, and I've already gotten feedback of how much value guys are getting out of getting to hear the real elk themselves, and of course Chris's commentary on those different sounds. Make sure to check that out. Chris, how you doing today?
Doing all right. How you guys been?
Oh, pretty good. I just, my wife and I woke up this morning and hiked up to Cathedral Lake up here above Aspen, and it was awesome. We started, I want to say it was at 8,900 feet where we started, and the lake, Cathedral Lake, I believe is at 11,900 feet, and gained right at 2,000 feet of elevation. I think it was 6 miles, right at 6 miles round trip. But going up, definitely felt the altitude, which is great because I'm getting ready for my Beaver Utah elk hunt, and there's some similar elevation there. And so it was definitely a training day that was picked up the pace a little bit as far as starting at a much higher elevation, and I could dang sure feel it. I've been doing a lot of hiking here, sometimes twice a day here at 6,500, 7,000 feet, and you kick it on up to 9, 10, 11, and even almost up to 12,000 feet. You definitely feel the air a little thinner up there. So we just got back, and it's good to have you on today. Today we're going to have a clip. This is kind of our part 2 Real Elk Sounds of the Real Elk Sounds series. And I thought it was important to have a clip like this where we've got quite a bit of bugling, and most of the bugling is coming from one bull. Let me set this vocalization, this scenario up a little bit. Dar Colburn, my guiding and hunting partner, was guiding a guy named Jeff Hartland, and this is in Arizona on public land. And it was about the 20th or 21st of September. It was getting kind of towards the end of the archery season there, and the bulls were really getting fired up, and Dar and Jeff had hiked into an area before light and heard this one particular bull, which we're going to hear in this clip. And when you hear a bull like this, a lot of times a bull with this much guttural and this much just deep sound, it's always I definitely love checking out those bulls that have a lot of volume and that have that deep bugle. Although we've talked about it before, you can't ever judge a bull by his bugle, but it seems like I just gravitate towards those older more hoarse sounding bugles. And we've all been on this situation where you think you're on a giant and you get up there and it's a 5-point that's just growling his head off and sounds hoarse. And this particular bull is a 6x7. He's probably in the 335, 340, maybe a smidge better class, but he just is ripping it up on this one open ridge, and I think it's going to be awesome to dissect this clip with you. And first, what I want to do is I want to play this clip in its entirety. So the very first thing we're going to do right here is we're going to run this whole clip, and I encourage you guys that are listening to put your headphones on and listen to this with headphones so that you can hear all the little intricate sounds with the bulls in the distance bugling and what have you. Then Chris and I, once the clip is played in full, we're going to come back and we're going to dissect the clip and hopefully provide some value on these real elk sounds. So you ready for that, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
One thing I want to point out is this is public land. This is Dar Colburn. This is my friend, my hunting partner, and the live video of this clip will be featured on the elk module, Roe Hunting Resources. If you guys haven't checked out Chris's elk module, it's a phenomenal resource, and definitely for any elk hunter, something you must check out and be a part of. The gallery that he has, and all of the video and all of the strategies in action where Chris sets up, okay, here's the deal, here's how I'm going to approach this. It's just super valuable. So I just encourage the listeners to check Chris out, and at the end of this podcast he'll tell you how to fully check it out if you haven't already. So let's run the full clip, and then Chris, you and I will come back. Okay, Chris. Now that everybody's got to hear the live clip, let's play the clip and let's go through it. And before we do that, I want to point a couple things out here. Your background is in studying animal behavior, correct?
Yeah, wildlife biology, but a definite strong focus in behavioral ecology and communication.
Okay, and another thing is I wanted you on this podcast to do this Real Elks series because most all of your hunting has been on private land. Is that right?
Yeah, private land owned by the federal government, yes.
Okay, so most of your cutting your teeth on studying animal behavior and studying elk in their natural environment, most of your experience has been on public land, correct?
Pretty much all of it. I have had a chance to hunt one chunk of private property, and this could be a discussion for a later time because, I mean, it is a great lesson, but I mean, in short, I had an 1,800-acre ranch elk property that was next door to a 30,000-acre ranch. It was highly managed for elk that literally the guy, the outfitter, the lessee said, Chris, it's the first year we've had this for archery season. I'm giving you 1,800 acres. I want you to learn it, and I want you to tell me everything there is about it for archery season. And I had the entire archery season to myself on 1,800 acres, and it was the most difficult hunt I've ever been on, and I did not kill an elk. So we could talk about that another time, but yeah, that's the only time I've ever hunted private land for elk. Everything else has been on public ground, and seriously, 99% of the time, it's over-the-counter units with a lot of other hunters out there. I mean, I started out just like everybody else when I was in college, and when I was first starting to work. I had a 4-day weekend, and that's what I had, and I had to learn to get her done. And so, yeah, that's where it all kind of started. And once I started kind of playing, when I started getting into my biology field, I worked on some elk research projects, started to get a better handle of what their communication and behavior and all that was. And when I started incorporating that into what I was doing with my hunting, that's when things started to click, and I just got engrossed in it, and that's where I've just gone from there. So, yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is I think it's important. The loyal listeners that I have here at the J. Scott Outdoors podcast, they've gotten to know me over the years, and I come from a background of, I've taken 20 years in a row, taking the entire month of September off, literally all 30 days. The last 20 years, it's been nothing but chasing elk and listening and studying elk myself, hunting elk, videoing elk. And one of the things in Arizona where I've done most of my elk hunting, it's elk Disneyland, but one of the fortunes that I've had has been I have been able to hear and be around a lot of elk and experience a lot of their behavior and listen to a lot of elk bugle, listen to a lot of elk interact with each other, and I know you have as well, but for anybody out there that thinks, oh, Jay just hunts public, private land, Jay just hunts reservations, well, I have hunted reservations, and I would say that, in a 30-day season, I've probably heard, more elk than somebody that's maybe hunted 20 years on public land. So that shouldn't disqualify me, in my opinion, from not knowing elk sounds. I think that should actually overqualify me. And I only bring that up just to make a point. Everybody comes from a different background. Everybody hunts different states. Everybody hunts different areas. And I think one of the big values that you bring, Chris, is your understanding of these animals. And all we're trying to do here at the J. Scott Outdoors podcast, my only focus is to help people learn and understand and get better, period. I don't care if I have someone that's, maybe doesn't relate, so to speak, to the listener. As long as the listener can learn and as long as I can learn, that's what we're doing. And I've found over the years that I can learn from anyone. I can learn from someone that's hunted something 1 year and I've hunted it for 25 years. There's always something that you can pick up if you just listen, if you have an open mind, and if you're willing to put yourself out there and really take it in and digest it. And not everybody's going to have the same ideas on a lot of things, particularly, elk sounds, whether you call it one thing and someone calls it another. I don't care about all that. All I want is the listener to be able to take information that they hear on this podcast and interpret it when it's happening in the field and be able to make a play that's going to make them better than they were the day before.
Yeah. Yeah, and I apologize. I'm laughing here because I know what we've talked about before. And when Jay, when folks, obviously you just listened to the clip, and I laugh because we are going to, by just default, when Jay sent me this clip and said, I want to talk about this, I groaned. I was like, oh goodness, because here we go. We're definitely going to get in the realm of some controversial, basically just different philosophies.
It is.
It's a fundamental different philosophy and way of thinking. For me, for people that value what I value, it is a different layer of a different level of philosophy. And you hit on it. Yes, you've had the chance to hunt some pretty phenomenal places. I have been blessed to hunt all sorts of, from a couple places in Wyoming, all over Colorado, a couple places in New Mexico, a couple places in Arizona. I've had a chance to see a wide variety of places where there are elk, all the way from large private properties and national parks, all the way down to the most raped and pillaged public ground than you can imagine. and even places in Washington, coastal Washington, and elk are elk.
As my buddy Casey Brooks says, elk are elk. They are what they are.
Yeah.
They're going to act. Sometimes they act a little bit differently because of human interaction, but elk are elk.
Yeah, or their habitat, absolutely, and it really is dependent upon hunting pressure, their habitat that they're in, and I talk about this on the elk module, the sex ratio that you've got, the age class ratio that you've got. I mean, all these things come into play on how elk manifest their behavior from a visible or audible standpoint from us as hunters, whether we see it or hear it or whatever. But elk are elk. You can take a coastal Roosevelt elk, a coastal Californian Thule, put it in with a bull from Arizona and then a bull from southern Wyoming. You could put them in a pen full of cows, and they will all know how to handle those cows. They will all know how to handle each other. All their behavioral clues are going to be absolutely the same. I truly believe are going to be absolutely the same. You might have different inflections of their voice, but they're going to know how to communicate because their communication is the same. But where the controversy, and I apologize, I laugh because I get beat up I don't get beat up, but people criticize. I did on our YouTube channel. If you look at it, there's a YouTube video on our YouTube channel, and I put it out there last year. Does it really matter? Do you really need to know what you are saying? You just got done with a series with Jason Phelps, which was I thought that was an awesome interview you had with Jason Phelps, with Phelps Game Calls. And right there, even he caught. He's like, I don't get into what the elk are saying or why they're saying it, blah blah blah. I just go, you will hear that qualification because some of this gets so controversial. Well, we can talk about. I think we're going to have to when we get into this. Let's talk about my philosophy a little bit and kind of come from a perspective of kind of where I'm coming from when I talk about some of these things, and when we're talking about the vocalizations or what they mean or whatever. We'll touch on kind of my grounding and where my foundation is on some of this stuff. But I know it's probably a little different than what you're going to hear anywhere else, and I'm not saying anybody else's stuff is wrong. Jay's not saying anybody else's stuff is wrong. Just provide an alternative. If you want something different than what else is out there, then I think we've got an answer for you. But other than that, it's an alternative. Learn from it. Take what you want from it. Discard what you don't want, and just be a better caller, be a better hunter, and put more animals on the ground.
Well, I would say this, Chris. You go out in the elk woods every day, and you never learn anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute. Do you learn something every time you go out?
I try to. I don't know if I will. So more often than not lately, the older I get, is just how I don't bounce anymore.
How things don't bounce back.
Or muscles get sore. But yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, if you're going out in the woods and open eyes, open ears, open mind, and just soak it in, even if it's a tiny little tidbit here or there, I really do. I try to pick up something new every time. Even if it's not something new, it's something that either confirms what I've already done or disproves what I've already done. And I think that's something we'll touch on here in a minute, too.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's all trial and error. As much as we want to be elk ourselves and be able to, say, yeah, I'm an elk 30 days out of the year, I'm an elk, and I sound just like one, and I know what elk think, all of us are always learning, and I think, there's many ways to skin a cat, and there's many different ways to describe skinning that cat, and everybody's got their own opinion, and I think that's what's great. And so I think, we're all elk hunters here. We're all hunters. We're all sportsmen. We're all human beings, and everybody has a different way of doing things. And you and I could do this, go on the same hunt with two totally different strategies and probably both be successful. But then there's times when maybe over a long period of time, there's someone out there that their strategy seems to be successful year in and year out. Those are the guys I want to talk to. That's why I talking to you. That's why I had Jason Phelps on. That's why I've had a lot of the great guests that I've had on, because dang, I don't know. I learn every day. The older I get, the less I know. I feel like, golly, I should know more about this stuff than I already do. And all of my hunting has all been trial and error. I've literally made every mistake out there. I've had bulls that are dead to rights, and I blow squawk a call or say the wrong thing, or I'm calling a turkey and everything's going great, and I decide to pull something out and get cute on it, and so I've made every mistake there is. The reality is we're all elk hunters. Let's just dig into this stuff and roll around in the dirt with it and come out on the other side. Not saying Chris Rowe doesn't know what he's talking about, or so and so doesn't know what he's talking about. Saying, yeah, he makes a couple pretty good points there. Maybe I completely disagree with you, Chris, on some things, but that's the beauty of it. Let's talk about it. Let's try and get better. And I love rolling around in the dirt.
I was going to say, let's dive in head first and hope it's deep enough we don't hit the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't we dive into this clip here, and let's just pick it apart.
All right. Now, we were talking earlier, too. Let me just pause it real quick. Sorry, Jay. Like you mentioned in the beginning, there are some quiet spots. There's right now, you may not be able to pick up on some of the subtle sounds, but in these dead spots sometimes, there are other elk off in the distance that will vocalize that I think can be an important factor on understanding some of this, and we will have a discussion about that. So if you hear a dead spot in there, have patience. Listen, definitely, if you can listen with headphones, it'll be a lot better, because I've got the volume turned up, and you can always go back and refer to the first clip that Jay put in there, because that's going to be the highest quality clip that's in there. And again, if you jump on the elk module, you'll be able to see the video and watch the behavior and everything. But have some patience. The dead spots in there, there sometimes are things going on in there, so we'll let some of them roll. So,
well, and I think those dead spots also, when you play it in real time, give you, sometimes I can edit up a clip where it's bulls bugling every 5 seconds. Well, the real 7-minute clip, maybe the bull only bugles 6 times, but that's how it is out in the woods. Those are real elk sounds, so let's just play it and pick it apart. Okay, so right there, Jeff is asking Dar, what do you think the bull is scoring? And at that point, the bull is kind of now into view, and they've kind of snuck in on this bull, and it's kind of in this open kind of burn area. And Dar's kind of telling him, I think 335, 340, not a shooter.
And that's the thing that I think people have a hard time understanding. And I still do. I've been down in Unit 9 now, how many years? And I still... this bull steps out of the timber and steps out kind of in the open, and you're like, oh, yeah. I mean, he's impressive looking, but again, down there, yeah, most of the time a 330, 340 bull is not a shooter. Hold out, because there's probably something bigger.
Yeah, and they ended up killing a 380 7x7. That's just an awesome looking bull.
All right, I'm going to hit play.
Let's stop that right there, Chris. So in the background, you heard another bull bugle off in the distance, and this bull immediately jumped on top of that bull. In your opinion, is this bull responding to that other bull? Is it just a matter of circumstance that he was going to bugle too? Or what is he trying to say? In your opinion, you've seen the video. What do you think this bull is trying to say to that bull in the distance?
All right. If you don't mind, then I think this is where we start. I'm starting to jump up and down on the diving board and ready to launch, because a lot of people that are listening to this, I know for a fact, I've been in the industry long enough to know that there's a lot of people that are listening to this and be like, oh man, that's an awesome challenge bugle. And then there's other people that are going to be, oh man, that's an awesome display bugle. And then, that's a perfect example of a bull calling cows bugle. And so there's going to be all these the listeners in their mind probably have have already determined based off what they're hearing, some classification of this vocalization based on what they've heard other people say. The problem is, and this is where my philosophy starts to diverge from everybody else's. In my opinion, the problem is just that fact that you have three, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, three different quote-unquote classifications of what that bugle is, and three different classifications of what that bugle is supposed to represent, and it's one one vocalization. So which one is right? Or are they all right? Or can they be all right? Or are none of them right? The problem, and this is where, again, this is, and I got to try to figure out how I want to frame it because there's so much of a in-depth discussion on it. By all means, if for those that are the subscribers to it, they know this already because I have an entire series on bull vocalizations that dive into this. But in short, unfortunately, I know that a lot of people spend the bulk of their time in the field in September or whatever, and they encounter an elk that vocalizes this way. And when they encountered a bull vocalizing in this particular way, there were cows doing something in particular, or there was another bull nearby, and so those two bulls were doing something in particular, or this bull was off by himself and he was doing something in particular. And so they associated the vocalization with what they saw at that moment and then made a conclusion. They're like, okay, I saw this, therefore, and these other things were happening as well, so therefore I think that this bull vocalizing this way means blah, X, Y, Z, whatever. All right? Now, the problem with just doing that and taking snapshots like that is someone else on a different ridge, on a different mountain, in a different state, whatever, and in completely different conditions, completely different sex ratios, completely different age class structure, completely different habitat, whatever, hunting pressure, etc., sees the exact same thing and hears the exact same thing and sees something different. Well, now here we go. We start going down this branching, this nebulous, to where again, one vocalization is considered three different things. And so when we start to talk about them, you say, he did a great challenge bugle, and that puts an idea in your mind. Well, if you identify this as a bull calling cows bugle or a display bugle, you're like, well, wait a minute. Well, no, that's a display bugle. Well, no, because that, and here we go down, we argue back and forth, but we're arguing based off of the manifestation or the surface level interaction that we saw. And very few people, ever try to actually dissect it and rip it apart. And the one thing, and this I talk about in the glunks. I've got a video on glunks, and to be honest, my wife is a wildlife biologist as well, and it wasn't until we sat down and we were just going through hours and hours of video that she is the one that stumbled on it, and she's like, wait a minute. All the other stuff that everybody ever talked about glunks, no. What about this? And she provided a hypothesis, and we started going through the process of trying to, this is the important part, disprove it. And we couldn't. We really, I think, identified with glunks. The same thing with this. A lot of people will hear this, and then they saw or remember the experience that they had, and then they will try to bolster that experience. And every time they see an experience or hear a bull do it, they try to gather more evidence to prove themselves right. The problem with that is you can never prove yourself right. You can only disprove something, all right? So it's not until you sit and you watch elk from all over the country, you sit and watch elk from different parts of the season, different age classes, sex ratios, all the different aspects, and you sit there and you watch it in video, and you sit there and you watch the body language and the behavior of the animal, that you can really start to boil down and get to the core fundamentals of what possibly could be going on. And so for me, I can tell you, I listen to these bugles. Jay, when you first sent this to me, you're like, oh man, there's all sorts of bugling. And I kind of chuckled because there is not all sorts of bugling. There's really one type of bugling. Now, he bugles a lot, but he's doing the same thing. For me, I classify this as a dominant bugle. All right, I don't use the terminology challenge bugle or display bugle or bull calling cows bugle and that type of stuff, because I can pick apart and disprove that analogy or that linkage. Correlation is not necessarily causation. Just because you saw something happen at one point does not mean it caused it. So I can take any of those classifications and rip them apart just with the video footage that I have in the elk module. The one thing I cannot rip apart is in all cases that bull is trying to portray his dominance. He is either expressing his actual dominance that he has proven on the battlefield by fighting or running off other bulls, or he is trying to portray his dominance and he's trying to give the impression that he is a dominant bull because, again, cows choose the bulls. Cows like to generally go towards more mature animals, more dominant animals, because those dominant bulls, those mature bulls protect the cows, blah, blah, blah. We can get at all that. It's in the best interest of a bull to sound as mature and dominant as possible. It avoids fights, it attracts cows, it helps him hold cows, it helps him avoid other bulls, etc. So when you ask the question and you say, okay, what does this mean? What is this bull doing? What does it mean to you? And did he respond to that other bull? For me, and I know this for a lot of the other the elk module subscribers, but once you understand it, that this when they're vocalizing like this, again, I classify it as a dominant bugle, and I will oftentimes separate it into 3 different levels. A lower level, level 1, a level 2 that's kind of medium, and a level 3 that's very, very intense. This I would classify that most of these vocalizations right there would be a level 2 dominant bugle. It's a bull trying to portray that he's dominant, and he's coming in at a medium intensity. All right? As soon as I know that, I understand what the bull is trying to achieve. And so when you ask me, is he, we talked about this before we started the podcast, you're like, oh yeah, every time that other bull out in the distance bugles, this one responds. Well, I would challenge that and say, okay, as we listen to this, is he actually responding to that other bull? Or is he trying to, I don't remember how do we even put it? Is he trying to just essentially deflect the attention away from that other bull? Okay?
Almost like if a cow's standing there and it's like, oh, you didn't really hear that. I'm the one.
That's right. It's don't listen to him, listen to me. No, I'm the more dominant individual. Because again, a bull wants to sound dominant. He wants to be the main attraction. He wants to be the most dominant, the most aggressive, the most mature. So that way, if there's a cow like you said, if there's a cow standing in between and she's looking left at one bull and she's looking right at another bull, which bull do I choose? She's got to go off of, if she cannot see the bull. Again, I talk about this all the time, the see you first, hear you second, smell you third principle. If she cannot see him, the only thing that she can do is evaluate him from what she hears. So, hence the reason why it's in the best interest of a bull to sound as big and mature and dominant as he can, so that hopefully she chooses to go his way. And this is where a lot of people will just sit and listen to an audio clip without the video clip, and they make decisions or make broad, sweeping generalizations. When people get to see this video, and again, you and I talked about this ahead of time, when you see this video, it's clear. It's absolutely clear that this bull is out there and he is trying. I mean, he's out. If he was a turkey, he'd be out there strutting, strutting right. And drumming.
He's walking back and forth. He's tipping his rack back, and he's strutting back and forth.
Yes, I mean, great, low antler displays. He's using that level 2 dominant bugle, trying to sound as dominant as he possibly can. But if you watch his head position, his ear position, his body position, you can clearly see he's not challenging anyone. His ears are forward, his head is up, his eyes are forward. He is seeking, he's curious, he's looking, he's out there seeking. Can I see anybody? Can I see a cow around here? All right, so I classify this as a dominant bugle for those reasons. And in my opinion, I don't think he is actually responding, I don't think it's a situation where the bull in the distance says, "Where are you?" And this bull goes, "I'm over here." And the other bull says, "I'll stay away from there." And he goes, "Oh, no, I don't think." No, I don't think that that's the interaction. What I think, and you can sit there and you can watch that the body language, it is all about, no, pay attention to me, I'm better. No, pay attention to me, I'm better. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to show you. Step out. Come here. Show you. Let me show you.
So you're not necessarily saying that he's saying, "Come over here, bull, and I'll whip you." He's more saying, I'm doing this because I want to appear big, bad, and tough because I want to breed cows and I want cows to come to me. So couldn't you technically argue that it is bull calling cows bugle?
Yeah, you could. And the only reason why I do not use that terminology is because a dominant bugle is simultaneously two different things. It's attractive to cows, but it's also supposed to be a deterrent to other bulls. Other bulls don't necessarily want to be engaged with another bull, physically. Yes, we talk about it all the time. There are lovers and there's fighters. There are some bulls that are aggressive and they don't mind getting in a fight. I will argue that the vast majority are not that way. They do so much. If you watch behavior, they do so much ahead of time, before they ever lock antlers, to give one another visual clues that say, we don't want to go down this route. They're going to tip the antlers back, they're going to have their ears back, they're going to bare their ivory teeth, they're going to hiss at one another, they're going to posture, they're going to display. Then all of a sudden they start going parallel and back and forth, and they might weave and parallel back and forth for a while. They'll do head fakes where they start dropping their antlers and they'll throw their antlers forward at one another, almost like they're basically trying to sword fight. They throw the tops of their antlers towards one another. They'll start raking those antlers into the ground. They'll start tearing into trees. It's amazing the amount of stuff, visual clues, visual communication that they give one another all the way before they ever lock antlers, and it's all in an attempt to avoid the conflict. Now, yes, there are some bulls that just come charging in and they just charge in and want to go. I think that's more the exception than the rule. So this is simultaneously trying to be a deterrent to other bulls. So yeah, you could say, well, it's a bull calling cows bugle. Well, in that case, then every dominant bugle that they do is typically that. You know what I mean? It's not a unique vocalization, really. I don't think. When we're talking about a dominant bugle like this. And of course, there's a difference between a dominant bugle and a contact bugle, or what I call contact bugle, what other people call a locate bugle or whatever. But one is making a statement, one is curious. This is clearly making a statement. This is, I am dominant, I am mature, I am a bull that cows should want to be with, so come to me if you're a cow, and if you're a bull, you don't want to mess with me. I'm bigger, I'm more mature, I'm more aggressive, I'm more dominant than you, so just stay away.
So then what are the bulls in the background that you hear bugling along with this bull? What are the bulls in the background? Are they more contact bugles?
You know what? It is hard to hear them clearly. But when I put the headphones on and I crank it up, I believe that the bulk of the other vocalizations as you're hearing are also dominant bugles. My guess is, and obviously I was not there. All I'm going off of, so I will qualify this right now. All I'm going off of is what you described to me as the scenario and what I see in this video clip and the behavior that manifests itself in the animals that are in this video clip. My guess is you have multiple groups of elk. Bull with cows on the left, bull with cows on the right, maybe some other floater elk around there. And I think what you were hearing is basically bulls all displaying, or again, you could say a display bugle if you wanted to, but they're out there just trying to sound as big and bad as they can to try to keep other bulls away and simultaneously try to get as many cows to come to them as they can.
Okay, let's roll some more clip.
Okay, and so here's another dead spot for a little bit. Bull's just standing out there looking, just ears up. Okay, you can hear that clearly, that other bull in the distance, that was the same classification of a bugle. And here, let me pause it. And when I say classification of a bugle, listen to the structure of it. And that's kind of what I focus on when I, again, the bull vocalizations series, it's all listening to the classification of the vocalization, or the characteristic, excuse me. In this case, you hear that low, deep, guttural, low note, the growl or the rasp, if you want to put aggressiveness, you can. You want to put, growl or however you want to just describe the lead in and the bulk of that vocalization. The bull he's not spending the bulk of his time emphasizing the high note of his bugle. He's emphasizing the low, guttural, raspy, growly, aggressive, quote unquote, sounding portion of the bugle. So clearly at this point, it's not a seeking, he's not curious, he's not trying to elicit a response, he's sending him, this is information sending vocalizations. I'm making a statement, okay? And the other bull off in the distance did the exact same thing. If you listen to the characteristics of the vocalization, you will hear, even though the bulls sound different, the characteristics of the emphasis of different parts of the vocalization are the same. Does that make sense? Or did I confuse the heck out of you?
No, I think it makes sense. Back to something you said, if they just emphasize on the high note, what kind of bugle would you classify that as?
That typically starts going back over to a contact bugle. What other people say is a locate bugle. All right? Now you're seeking and eliciting, you're trying to get information.
Okay. Let's roll some more clip.
So again, the bull's just standing out there listening to all this. He's just kind of looking around.
There's several bulls in the background.
Yeah, I was going to say, at this point, I think I can identify 3 different bulls. And they're all about a couple hundred to several hundred yards away from this location. Okay, let me pause it. For those of you that are listening on headphones, if you go back or you want to listen to the first high quality clip, it's right about 2 minutes, 1 minute 59 seconds into the audio. That bull in the distance, you heard it. It was just as clear as day. He hit a high note, but that's fine. But the emphasis of the rest of the vocalization in his bugle was that low note. There's no question. Dominant bugle, he's saying and portraying and sending the exact same thing, same information as the bull that's standing in front of the camera. Yeah, his head is up, his ears are forward. Now he just drops his head, takes a couple bites. This bull is totally relaxed. Even though he sounds so awesome, so gnarly, he is completely relaxed. He's not fired up in an aggressive way. He's just looking around.
Okay, stop it right there for a second. Chris, as an elk hunter, and guys are listening to this and trying to probably say, okay, what do I do as a hunter when I hear a bull doing the same thing in a fairly stationary, in kind of holding in an area within 50, 60 yards back and forth, what kind of approach would you recommend that a hunter have to be able to call this bull in? Obviously, Dar and Jeff, when guys see this clip, the bull's basically within shooting range most of the whole time that the bull's in this clip.
Yeah, and where you just had me stop it. Oh yeah, he just walked wide open. What I'm guessing, 30, 40 yards maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, you see Jeff, you see the hunter, and you see the bull in the clip. Jeff's in the clip, the bull's in the clip. It's all right there. But from a strategy standpoint, for when guys hear this exact, real dominant bugle, how do you approach that as you're, moving in, trying to get closer? What's your approach?
Well, in this, again, you know me, and I've talked about it before. I do personally lean heavy on cow vocalizations. I think my understanding of cow vocalizations and what I do in a targeted standpoint, I would feed this bull assembly mews until I put him in my client's front right pocket. I mean, literally, this bull is just dying to find a cow. I mean, that is the whole point of his whole operation right now. When he stepped out of the timber and he was by himself, that's number one. This is why understanding behavior and understanding the visual clues that the elk will give you pays such huge dividends on your success out in the field. Because I don't care if this bull had 30 cows off to the right. He just left them. He just walked out into this opening by himself. The vocalizations that he's giving clearly suggest he wants a cow. He is trying to attract cows. He's trying to keep other bulls at bay, but he is attracting cows. You've already told me the time period in September where this is, which we're typically, if we're talking about that 20th to 22nd, somewhere around there in September, we're talking about right around that fall equinox, okay? So we know there should be cows cycling into estrus. Bulls at this period of September absolutely should be wanting cows as much as possible. He's out in the open by himself vocalizing in this manner. This bull wants a cow. Give him one, just flat out. And I talk about a targeted strategy using, lost mews and assembly mews and other vocalizations as well. I wouldn't even bother with a lost mew. I wouldn't even be worried about making vocal contact with this bull. I would just flat. As soon as he stepped out the first time, I would have handed him a couple of assembly mews, maybe a frustrated whine in there just to really seal the deal. But I would I want you to come to me, and I would have put him in my, like I said, right front pocket, and I would have shot him at 3 steps if I wanted to kill him. Seriously,
you would not have bugled at him.
No, you don't. At this point, no, and that's the. People think all the time, because I don't talk a lot about challenging bulls with bugles, that I don't do it. That's not the case at all. I think there are a few strategic times where challenging a bull is absolutely the thing that you need to do, and sometimes it is all that you can do in order to make that scenario happen. A few years ago, I had a limited draw license in Colorado. I had hunted for a solid 10 days, and I was putting everything out there, and literally the biggest bull I had a shot opportunity at, the only way that I got him into range and stopped him where I did was because I flat out ripped out my bugle, and I flat went after that bull, physically running after him and literally challenging him and just blowing a bugle like this, big, nasty, as gnarly as I could, until he finally had enough and stopped, whipped around, and came back out to try to either run me off or fight me. Unfortunately, I had just too many sticks in the way, and I couldn't make the shot. It wasn't a clear shot, and he turned around, went back, and took off with his cows, and it just didn't happen. But the only reason why I got in that situation is because I challenged that bull. There are times, yes, challenging a bull is by far the best thing to do. Unfortunately, I typically believe, my philosophy is I will use that aggressive strategy as a last resort, because where I hunt, public land, over the counter, most of the time, with other hunters in the area, if I'm blowing a bugle like that, I'm either calling in other hunters, or if it doesn't work and I bump that animal, well, I've just sent him out. It may have taken me 4 days to figure out where the elk were, get in position, figure out what their pattern is, and everything. If it doesn't work, it can be very disruptive to their behavior pattern on the mountain. You know, where they are, where they feed, why they come out, when they come out, what time they come out, etc. I don't like to bump them or be too disruptive right off the bat. I like to come in very passively, low key, work them. If it doesn't work, I can back out, regroup, come back that evening, try again. Didn't work, I can back out. And if I don't change their behavior, a lot of times I can work them 3, 4, 5 different times and they have no clue that they're actually being worked by a hunter. Sometimes blowing a bugle at them can be extremely disruptive. And I think in this situation, people will get all, you get excited. Here's a bull screaming his head off. Oh my gosh, this is the sexy scenario that everybody talks about, that everybody wants. I'm going to pull my bugle out and I'm going to just blow in his face. Well, the terrain and the openness of this doesn't lend itself to that, because he can see quite a decent distance, all right? He clearly wants a cow. Well, if he clearly wants a cow, why do I want to try to fight him when I can give him what I know he wants, or I can throw something at him and see if he's interested. You know what I mean? I can either take a gamble or I can make the safe bet. If I want to kill this bull, I'm going to pick the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to throw him a cow vocalization and put him in my pocket. If he locks up and doesn't respond, and if he gets himself in a different position where the vegetation and the terrain or whatever allow me to get a little closer, then okay, maybe I can go to a bugle if I need to. But I'm telling you, experience has taught me, I can show it to you so many times on the elk module. You give a bull like this an assembly mew, it's over. You are either going to kill this bull because you want to harvest this bull, and you're going to do it on the, Primos talks about the top pin. You're going to shoot this bull at 10 yards or under, or you're going to let this bull pass. Period. I mean, the end of discussion. This bull wants a cow. Give him one.
Give the big boy what he wants.
Give him what he wants. Start there, and then if he doesn't respond, because I know that the argument, some people are like, well, that bull, if it's that open, Chris, well, that bull could get out there and just stop and look, and then he could display, and yep, you're right. But if you get on the elk module and you start to understand what an assembly mew sounds like and what it means, there's a difference in his behavior and how he's going to engage that vocalization. But yes, he could stand out there and stop and display, or stand there and look and stare, and they do. Okay, that's fine. But if he wanders off, just let him wander off. Regroup, do it again. You have not changed an ounce of his behavior. However, you blow a bugle in this situation and he is not an aggressive bull, he's not a fighter, he literally could turn 180 degrees, go, oh crap, I'm out of here, and turn around, go right back to the cows or go right back in the timber and walk off trying to avoid a conflict he doesn't want to be in.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been in situations with humans where you see someone that's strutting around and bowed up and, talking big, but as soon as someone that walks in the room that everybody knows is the toughest guy around, all of a sudden the big bowed up, the guy that's all bowed up, a lot of times he's out the other door and off he goes. So I think it's that scenario right there too.
And I think we both agree in this case. I mean, again, folks, I obviously have a self-serving interest on it. I want you to subscribe to the elk module, but it's cheap. But anyway,
it's cheap.
Even
$20.
Well,
I mean, come
$20
on.
for the 3 months or $40 for the full year. Come on. But anyway, when you watch this video,
wait a minute. That's if you use the J. Scott podcast.
Yes.
Promo.
Yes. So, I mean, if you watch this stuff, you see it and you clearly understand it. That Jay, I think you'll agree with me here. I'm just gonna this bull is clearly in the 330s, 340s range. And I think Dart said that. I think you agree with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Even though his antler quality is that, for me, I look at the body of this bull, and I'm guessing. I'm going to throw it out there. I think this bull has got to be at least 6 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say 6 to 7.
Okay.
He's got a solid body. He's just, he may be a bull that he's always 335 and really never gets that much better. I mean, he's got a pretty decent sized body.
Yes, he's got a good chest. He's got some good, decent body mass. The reason why I'm focusing on that is because in the animal kingdom there are going to be two things when you're talking about a bull in conflict and judging one another from a dominant status. Body size matters. Sorry, guys, size matters. All right? So antler size matters, but body mass matters just as much, if not more. Okay? Because that's what they're throwing around. They're throwing around their weight. Now, if a bull has a unique antler characteristic, say he's got some big honking third tine or second tine that just jabs him, his opponent in the neck easily. Okay, he's got a characteristic that gives him a slight advantage because he can poke the heck out of his other opponent. But even if they had equal matched antlers, another bull walks in here that's bigger body size, I really am not convinced that this bull wants any sort of conflict. I bet you if a 360, 370 bull walked out into this meadow and came up, if again you watch this video, there's a little slight knob, there's a little ridge. If a bigger bull walked over that ridge, I would bet you strong money this bull would turn 180 and walk away. He'd be like, "Whoops, I'm out and I'm going back."
Right. Yeah, and is this the case that if this is Monday Night Football and you're sitting up in the booth and you're able to sit here and watch this scenario and let's say Dar pulls out his bugle and just rips one, would you be going, "What is he doing? What is he doing? Where's the assembly muse?"
I would be doing that. This is where me being the analytical one and the guy that always wants to play and tinker and test, I would immediately be like, "What the heck are you doing?" All right, I want to see what happens. I would. I'm like, all right, let's see what happens here. And there's a couple times I do that in the strategies and actions section. I just finished up a video that's going to be up there right now or very soon where I do that. I'm clearly, it's a situation where I'm calling cow. There's a bull. He's got two cows. Clearly, the larger group is behind me. These cows have no clue I'm there. This bull kind of sees me set up. He wasn't quite sure, but he knows something's not right. But the cows are oblivious. And so he's trying to keep the cows sequestered away from me. He's not sure he wants to come in, but the cows don't want to be with him. The cows want to be with the rest of the group. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to call the cows. Forget the bull. I'm going to call the cows. So I start hammering that targeted strategy and start calling the cows. And sure enough, they split. One goes left, one goes right. He's toast. He can't control both of those cows. So it's done. It's over. That bull is, at that point, that bull is callable. Well, in there, I'm like, based on a variety of things, I decided, I'm going to give him a bugle. His head was blocked, and I sent him a bugle just to take his temperature, see what he thought and what he was interested in. He didn't respond one way. He just completely ignored it, and he was more focused on his cow. All right, fine. Scrap the bugle. Go back to the cow calls. Go back to the original strategy. I don't mind testing the waters a little bit. But yeah, if Dar had grabbed his bugle here and ripped one, I would have. I've been like, "What are you doing?"
All right, let's keep playing it.
This bull's just gently walking. His head is. Great chuckle there. I mean, he's just relaxed walking. His head is in a neutral position. Ears are forward. His eyes and ears are up. Now his head is up. He's seeking.
So wait a minute. Pause it.
Okay.
I hear that, and I think he's fired up. He's mad.
Yeah.
He's not, is he?
No, and see again.
But what? Okay, before you say something, 25 years worth of education on elk calling, and there's been a lot of people that have given their opinion. The general opinion is when you hear a dominant bugle like this, you instantly say, "Oh, he's fired up and mad."
Yeah.
And he wants to fight.
That's why 90% of the hunting public calls it a challenge bugle. Because they're like, "Oh yeah, he wants to fight. He's challenging those other bulls."
Okay, so my question for you is, in his behavior, what are you looking for that, he is mad and he does want to fight? What is the difference in what you're seeing right now?
If you watch a bull and he starts getting aggressive and he wants to fight, you're going to see his head in a different position. You're going to see his ears in a different position. He's going to hold his rack in a different position. He's going to start swaying that head back and forth. He's going to make exaggerated movements with that rack. He's there. And the gallery, again, this is why and I appreciate the partnership we have on this, because I think the video is so important to see this. Not only this series is on the elk module in its own section, but the gallery that I have in there shows this. I can't tell you. I don't know off the top of my head how many clips of the gallery I have in there that absolutely destroys the typical notion of a quote-unquote challenge bugle. Because it's not. You watch them in so many different scenarios that they're clearly not challenging another bull. The number one scenario where you'll hear this vocalization is not anywhere near another bull. It's literally when a bull goes up and scent checks a cow. You've seen it. His antlers are up. His head is up. He's lick, 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 and he's going behind the cow to taste and scent check her. When he goes up and scent checks her, if she is not receptive, two things are going to happen. One, she's going to drop her head. She's going to chew, 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 and she's going to do submissive chewing, which indicates to that bull, I'm submissive. I'm listening to you. I'm not ignoring you. I recognize your dominance, but I am not receptive yet, so I'm going to move away from you. All right? So she's going to do submissive chewing. As soon as she does that and moves off, he is going to, I will tell you right now, 99.95% of the time, he is going to rip off with a level 2 dominant bugle. It's just what they do. Because he came in, he checked her, she rebuffed him. He's right now, instantly, I need to establish my dominance. Wow! I'm the man. You should want me, okay? I'm the one that needs to breed you. I'm your guy. So yes, you rebuffed me now, but I'm right here, baby. Okay? So when people hear this type of vocalization, a lot of time, I know it's the sexy side of elk hunting and calling elk, challenging them, having them come screaming in your face. It's awesome. Okay? But most of the time when you hear a bull doing it, I will postulate, I will put out there that he's probably not challenging another bull. He's probably either doing this, trying to broadcast himself, give the appearance. He's, again, just like we talked about in the last one, and I know we've talked about in other ones. When we vocalize, we're painting a picture. We're putting something in their mind. They are expecting to see something based on what they hear. And what they hear is going to paint a very vivid image in their mind. They know what they should expect to see or encounter. So when they bugle like this, they are painting a very vivid picture. All right? So, yeah, most of the time, no, they're not challenging one another, and they're not being aggressive. They're painting a picture that they're a dominant, mature bull, and they're just broadcasting that out there so that way the animals that cannot see them perceive them to be at least dominant, mature, aggressive, what have you. And this bull, his head is neutral, his antlers are up. Now, when he bugles, he lays his antlers back. That's fine. But when he's walking, his antlers are in a neutral position. His ears are forward. He's seeking. Every now and then he lifts his head up. He's looking, and his eyes and his ears are in concert with one another. They're looking and listening in the exact same direction. He's cruising the landscape, looking, seeking.
Okay, let's keep listening.
All right, let me pause it there for real quick. Actually, Jay, when we talked about this first time, if you heard the snapping twigs, if you're not watching this, then he kind of tears into a burned up little pine there that's all just dead sticks. No, actually, I changed my mind, Jay. Originally, I thought he just kind of ran into it and then just took his frustrations out of it. No, he walks up, puts his head down, and he just purposely throws his antlers into that poor little tree and just annihilates it.
Yeah, I remember watching it, and he just knocks the whole tree over, basically.
Yeah, just shears all the branches off that one side.
But again, he's not necessarily challenging a bull. He's more displaying some dominant. Right there in that clip, he is displaying some dominant characteristics, or he's definitely by knocking that bush over, or he just got tired of seeing that bush and wanted to knock it over. But that's attractive to the cows too.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The first thing he said, no, he walks up and he looks. You can see him look sideways, and he's like, "You're done," and he whips his head to the left and just takes all the branches off of it. Yeah, that's exactly it. It makes him feel powerful. It makes him feel more dominant. The sound of that, him destroying things, makes that seem like, goodness gracious, there's somebody up there, and he just destroyed it. It adds to that persona that maybe we've got a mature bull up there. Maybe if I'm a cow, maybe I kind of like the sound of that. Maybe I go up and check him out and see what he's all about. All right, want me to play?
Yep.
And now the bull's turned around and he starts coming back. And this is the cool thing. And here, let me push pause because we're going to want to hear some of this stuff. But if you watch this, you got to watch this. I don't know how a random. This bull gets to a point where he can literally walk straight or just randomly turn left. If he walks straight, he's going to walk between Jeff and Dar. This bull is on a dead beeline towards Dar. I thought for sure they were going to be in a situation like you posted on, with that bull just in your lap. But for some reason, this bull turns at the last second and goes left and then goes right back around him. But I thought for sure he was going to be in their laps.
I'd like to make a point here about that exact thing, because there's a lot of guys out there that don't call a lot, and they like to kind of spot and stalk and try and shadow those bulls and get in close. If you have the wind right and you're able to get close to a bull like this and you're not a caller, a lot of times if you hang tight or close the distance when you can, when he's walking away, if you can keep shadowing him and just kind of stay in there with him, especially when a bull is kind of walking on a ridge back and forth doing dominant, level 2 dominant bugles where he's just kind of, he's throwing it out there, there's a good chance that he's going to turn for whatever reason and start coming right back your way and give you the shot. So I want to encourage guys to get as close as you can and shadow these elk and try and, you never know when that bull's just all of a sudden going to turn around and walk right by you broadside and give you that shot.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. There's some extremely, extremely successful hunters that do very, very little calling. They just shadow them and spot and stalk them, or they just listen to them and they just charge in there. Dan Evans comes to mind. That guy has killed some just Oh my gosh! If anybody go to check out Dan Evans of Trophy Taker and look at his trophy room, goodness gracious, it'll make you sick on the number and size of the bulls he's killed. And I think Dan, 90% of those bulls he's just snuck in on and does very little calling. So calling is a tool. Even though I'm passionate about vocalizations and communication and behavior, and I love to call, I'll be the first to say calling is just a tool to use to help you put that animal on the ground. And in this case, you didn't need to do a lot of calling, if any, because this bull is right there. And what you touched on right there is huge. Now, like I said in the beginning, we're letting the dead spots in here roll in real time. Now, I'm sitting here looking at my monitor, and I've got the video editor up, and so I can actually see the audio, the graphical display of the audio. And if you look at his bugles, they are really evenly spaced in time, like maybe a minute apart, just boink, 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 boink. I mean, he's very predictable on his timing of his bugles. The thing is, though, is the dead space in here really isn't that long. I mean, while we're sitting here on a podcast, it might seem like forever, but this whole scenario unfolds in about 7 minutes, 20 seconds. And 7 minutes and 20 seconds, this bull goes from completely off screen or completely in the timber, and he pops out, to literally walking by the shooter within 20 to 30 yards 2 or 3 times, or twice. One's going and one's coming back. That's a very short amount of time. Patience is key. I show in the gallery and especially in the strategies and actions section where it's all video based. For the people that want a little bit more detail on that, the gallery section in my elk module is raw elk behavior with no interference from me or anybody else calling or doing it. It's just watching them naturally interact with one another on their own, by themselves, without any outside influence. The strategies and actions section is me going out in the field and say, okay, here's the situation, here's where I am, here's where I'm at, this is what I want to accomplish, I think the elk are up here, I'm going to use this strategy, let's go and let's see if it happens. And I go in there and we call the elk in and whatever happens, and you get to see it unfold. In all those cases, 99% of the time, I will let them run full on real time, and I know that there's one that's an hour-long clip, and people are like, goodness gracious, that's the most yeah, in some cases, it's a boring 1 hour. But the beautiful part about that is you get to see, I started my calling in the beginning, and I don't move. The bull is there, the elk are there, and an hour later, that bull's standing 10 steps in front of me. Have patience to let the setup unfold. If you know what you're saying, why you're saying it, you get a fundamental understanding of behavior, body language, and that type of stuff, you will have a better ability to let the setup work. Don't just automatically go, oh, it's not going to happen, and get up and move and move and move. I know there are some very, very successful elk hunters that are aggressive. And yes, there are times where you need to be aggressive. However, I think people can sometimes get themselves into trouble by being a little bit too aggressive too soon and not letting a scenario play out in the time that the elk want to play it out. Remember, they have nowhere to be. They're already there. They don't have kids to pick up from soccer practice. They don't have to work. They don't have work to get back to. They don't have to get back to lunch. They are there. They're where they need to be. So they've got all the time in the world. If you're watching their body language, you're watching their behavior, you can sit there and judge and say, no, I've got time. This bull is relaxed. He's not going anywhere. As long as the wind is not, in this situation, as long as the wind is not swirling, let it play out. Let it play out. Let me hit play. Yep. Sorry, I didn't mean to get out.
No, I like it.
The branches you just heard is him walking under a tree, just incidental contact with his antlers. At this point, this bull's got to be no more than, 15 yards maybe?
Yep.
wide open. All right, now I just paused it, Jay. We were talking before about this, and let me go ahead and just give people a little heads up. I want to let people listen to this and listen closely to this next section. Okay, the bull went up, turned around, came back, and just walked by the hunter like 15 yards wide open. And now the bull is headed back in the direction from where he came. All right. Now, off in the distance, up against the tree line, there's another elk standing there. It looks like a cow, but I'll be honest, with the way the sun glare is and the other vegetation stuff, it could be a spike. Don't know. My guess, based on his behavior, I'm going to bet it's probably a cow. All right, so the bull is turned now, and he's walking back towards the timber. He's walking back in the direction where he came from. But from here on out, I want you to listen very carefully, and then we're going to talk about something here in a second. Sound fair enough?
Yep.
And the funny thing is, I mean, he literally heads back to almost the exact spot he came out in. I mean, like literally the same tree he walked by. I'm going to pause it right there. I said for folks to listen carefully. How many people picked up on the fact that that was a different bull? Obviously, you can't show hands. I mean, it's a podcast. But, I mean, that if you're paying attention and you're listening to the characteristics of the vocalizations being made, yes, the structure of that vocalization right there was similar to the other one, but it was a completely different vocal signature. He didn't have the depth that the other one did. He didn't have the level of growl that the other one did. He hit a little bit higher of a high note and held it maybe a little bit longer than the other one did. The structure's the same. He emphasized that growl in the beginning. So in my book, that's still the same classification of a vocalization, but it's a different vocal signature. And again, when we talk back what we were talking about in the beginning, people hear something and then they just go, oh, well, that must be such and such. Well, it's different than I heard over here. Well, okay, it's different. Are the characteristics of the structure of the vocalization different or the same? If they are the same, the structure and the characteristics of the build of that vocalization are the same, and it's just a different vocal signature, it doesn't matter if it sounds different, it still means the same thing. All right? Everybody has a different voice. My voice is different than Jay's. Jay's is different than, who knows? There's some people that have a naturally low voice. Some people have a naturally high voice. Some people are really aggressive with their vocal signatures can be different. It is the structure of the vocalization that is the critical portion that is important when you are trying to communicate. So hopefully people picked up on that. And then the other thing too is you hear the snap crack bite, the hoof beats in the gravel. This second bull came up over the ridge and followed essentially the path that the bull had previously taken. The original bull had previously taken, and I think he saw Dar move. I think he either saw, in the way the sun is glaring off the lens of this, I guarantee the lens of that camera is glaring. I think the bull saw something he wasn't quite sure of, so that's why he just spooked a little bit. And he starts to trot, and because he starts to trot and he's spooked a little bit, he's going to go to where he feels safest, which is where? Literally right where the original bull just went. So you want me to just hit play and run to the end, and then we can continue? Or
yeah.
All right. So you hear him just trotting. And at this point, this second bull is a nice bull. What do you think? He's maybe 310 bull.
Yeah, I mean, I just not a shooter for this hunt, but just I don't really dig into it too much other than it's not a shooter, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, 300 type.
Yeah.
Bull.
So I mean, he's a nice bull, but he's not as big as the previous bull. I guess that's my point. And so as this bull starts trotting, and this new bull is trotting, because he's a little spooked, trotting towards the elk that he can see. Well, he's not going to trot towards the other big bull. He sees this cow, or what we believe is a cow, and so this smaller bull starts trotting to this other cow. Well, the original bull, that is where now, and unfortunately the clip ends, but that's where you see a body position change in that first original bull. All of a sudden, he's like, who the heck? And he sees this new bull trotting towards that cow, and all of a sudden, you see his shoulders come up, his head gets stiff, his antlers are, kind of... Now he all of a sudden, the first bull starts to parallel this new bull, and he's just bluffing, he's just blocking him. He's like, no, don't you get too close.
Yeah, but notice that he did not turn and charge at him.
No.
I think that's the thing that kind of solidifies your hypothesis, if you will, or your theory is that, if he was truly super, like I want to, I'm challenging any oncomer, and then an oncomer comes, he would just, if the theory, that he would have laid him out. Instead, he's kind of paralleling and going back where he came from, like, I'm going to go make sure he doesn't get with my cows, but I didn't see any behavior where he's like turning and like, I'm going to come over there and pummel you.
Nope, he was trying to scramble and put himself in between him and probably, and this is just a guess, probably where there are probably other cows down in there, he just basically ran interference. He's like, no crap, and he's just trying to cut him off. But you're absolutely right. If that bull had been super fired up and aggressive, he easily could have whipped around, thrown his antlers down, and charged. And literally, I bet you he would have at least bluffed that bull away and deflected him. But he didn't. He just got up paralleled him, kind of raised his shoulders, dropped his head and antlers a little bit, and then just basically paralleled him and just intercepted him and just ran interference. This is where I'm like, don't hit stop. Just keep the footage rolling.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we covered a lot of ground today, and as always, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight and your commentary. I want to give you a chance to let the listener know where they can find you, Chris, so could you please do that?
Sure, absolutely. It's just www.roehuntingresources.com. It's ROE, huntingresources.com. Again, we have an elk module in there you can subscribe to, and if you use the J. Scott Podcast, all one word, J. Scott Podcast, when you check out, there's a little spot for a coupon code. You enter that, it'll take 20% off. So it ends up literally, it's being $20 for 3 months or $40 for the full year. And we've got more than 20 hours worth of this. I mean, just of good quality video where you can see the behavior, you can see the interactions, the discussions about it, and dive into this stuff. And again, I know it's not for everybody, but if you want a little bit of a deeper understanding and you really want to dive into some of this stuff, we provide an alternative for resource where you can go and do that. So, and then of course we got our Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. It's all the same, Roe Hunting Resources. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I encourage everyone to go check it out. And we're here kind of mid part of July, and elk season's right around the corner.
Don't say that. Say it's early July. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel like I've got more time.
Yeah, I know. It's coming fast, and I'm getting excited every day, getting more excited and getting more fired up, as I know a lot of the listeners are. I know you are, Chris. So until our next Real Elk Sounds clip, until the next part of the Real Elk Sounds series, I just want to wish you the best. I want to thank you for coming on, and God bless you, and thanks for all that you do, buddy.
Absolutely. Thank you as well, and be safe, and look forward to talking to you next time.
Okay, buddy. Sounds good.